Hey, thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity to spend some time with those of you that have joined us here today. I'm going to jump right into this since our time is somewhat limited, and I believe there will be an opportunity for some question and answer at the end of this session. So I'm here today just to touch on some of the key principles to leading organizational change. A lot of this is based upon some of the research done by Dr. John Cotter at Harvard University in Cambridge, Massachusetts over the last 30 years. I had an opportunity to work alongside John as well as others that were mentioned in the introduction. And one of our primary focus areas is how do you effectively lead large-scale transformational change efforts within an organization and sustain the results over time. I'm going to hit on the headlines on the key principles of how to effectively lead organizational change, and we'll also talk a bit about why a majority of change efforts fail. And some of those reasons include complacency, too much of a focus on managing change, not being crystal clear and pristinely precise on the vision and the results that we need our organization to accomplish, and that sometimes leaders tend to spend too much time trying to convince and appease employees within an organization that may not contribute effectively to helping us accomplish what's most important. And oftentimes organizations tend to focus on attempting to accomplish too many new goals in addition to maintaining the organization. And there's some negative consequences to that as well. So let's jump right into this. Our friend Charles Darwin may have said it best when he said it's not the strongest of the species that survives nor the most intelligent, but the one most responsive to change. And that absolutely applies to organizations of any size as well, whether you're leading a team of 10, a team of 200, or a team of 20,000. Organizations that can embrace, adapt, and are agile are organizations that will continue to succeed and thrive in the new world of work. So why change leadership? When you think about change and the reason for exemplary change leadership, there's a lot of reasons driving the need for this. Here's a list of some. This is quite an extensive list. There's a lot more that's not here on this list or represented. But when you look at that list, there are a lot of organizations that allow these legitimate business reasons to become excuses why they are unable to accomplish the change efforts that are absolutely necessary within their organizations. Some that we have found over the last year or two to be of most consequence, and the ones that most organizations point to as being critically important, is pressure to innovate, increased levels of competition, as well as customers having more choice. There's a lot of options for our clients. What are we going to do to ensure that they maintain loyalty to our organizations? And as you look at that list, there may be some items listed there that are more relevant to what you're dealing with within your organization. So why don't we see much change leadership? Often you hear the term change management out thrown around by many organizations, that they're in a change management phase or a change management stage within their organization. And we'll talk about the difference between change leadership and change management. Why don't we see much change leadership? Well, there's a few reasons. Many organizations have never had to move faster than they've moved in the past. Many organizations have never had to speed up or do anything different because there was never anything pushing them to change. Another primary reason is many organizations are in a world that has sped up to 50 or 60 miles per hour compared to what they've done in the past at 30 miles per hour as represented here on the screen, but they don't see it because they're too internally focused and not looking at external business drivers that are changing the world of work as we know it now. We actually, at this point in time, are in what one of my past colleagues used to refer to as a brawl with no roles. Business world has changed dramatically over the last decade or 2 decades. There's organizations out there right now that some may call destructive competition or disruptive competition. Organizations that are looking to reinvent the way that we all do business. How do we deal with that? Well, it's all about leadership. Leadership is a choice. Leadership is not about your title, how many people report to you, where you sit in an organization. Leadership is primarily about the congruency between what you say and what you do. How do you lead effectively your organization to connect to the head and the heart of those within your organization that will help you accomplish what matters most? And the key when it comes to leadership, and you probably all understand this, you are all being watched all the time. Not just people will tolerate the words you speak, they will ultimately act on what they see you do. The congruency between what you say and what you do is one of the most important practices and traits of an exemplary leader. Making sure that you model the way. Every shrug of your shoulder, every blink of your eye, everything you do, you are being scrutinized, and your people are drawing conclusions and developing beliefs based upon what they see you do and how you act as a leader. Words, certainly they're important, but people will tolerate what you say. They will ultimately act on what you do. When it comes to any type of change effort, there are primarily, when you look at this bell-shaped curve, 3 categories into which all of your people within your organization will fall into one of these 3 categories. The first on the left is what we call the nevers. That's the group in any organization, on average, that will never contribute, engage, or help you achieve or accomplish whatever you're going after. In fact, Gallup organization here in the United States, who does a lot of research, did a recent study and found that on average, they put the number at 19%. 19% of employees in any given organization, whether you're a company of 100, 1,000, or 10,000, about 20% of your folks, they called poison. In fact, they said you would be better off paying them not to come to work. That's how much damage they do to your organization. Then you have the category in the middle. We call those the maybes. About 60% on average in any given organization are kind of on the fence. And then we have our models, those on the right-hand side of this bell-shaped curve. Those are the folks that will do anything to help you accomplish what matters most in your organization. The reason I put this bell-shaped curve up here on the screen is because when it comes to change, most leaders focus on, and their minds go to, the category on the left, the nevers. Our recommendation is don't spend any time trying to convince that group to help contribute to helping you accomplish what matters most. They're called nevers for a reason. They never ever will help you accomplish anything of significance or anything meaningful. All of your opportunity is with the middle category, the maybes. When we can convert even a small percentage of the maybes and move that bell shape and shift that bell-shaped curve further to the right, it has exponential impact within an organization. When we can create that bell-shaped curve so that we have more folks residing in the maybe and the model category, it has a significant and fundamental impact on helping us achieve and sustain what matters most within our organizations. So we'll present some of the principles behind how to accomplish that as we go through this presentation. So when it comes to change, it used to be that the big ate the small. Now it's the fast that eat the slow. Complacency is extremely dangerous when it comes to change. Companies that are fast, nimble, agile, resilient, those that can embrace change, those that have both an external and internal focus on possibilities and opportunities, as well as what the challenges and hazards are the organizations that will continue to thrive and succeed in the future. Jack Welch, the past CEO of General Electric, put it this way: organizations cannot be tentative. Excuses like channel conflict or marketing and sales aren't ready cannot be allowed. Delay and you risk being cut out of your own market, perhaps not by traditional competitors, but by companies you may not have heard of 24 months ago. So you can think about that statement as it relates to what the behemoth company Amazon.com did to all the small mom and pop bookstores years ago. They reinvented the business. They wiped them out. There surely, whatever business you are in, are organizations out there that are looking to reinvent the way your business is done. Here's a few more examples of companies that had too high levels of complacency, and it ended up destroying their organizations. Blockbuster used to rent videos. It was a brick and mortar operation. It was a retail outlet. People used to drive and rent a video, go home, watch the video, and then return the video back to Blockbuster. They were displaced. They didn't see the future. They didn't see the change that was about to take place, and Netflix and others overtook them significantly, and Blockbuster no longer exists. Kodak used to be the world's largest producer of film. Kodak didn't see the digital revolution, and they suffered dramatically. Nokia used to be the world's leader when it came to cell phones. They're almost out of business because they didn't make the transition or see the transition into the smartphone world. So what organizations are out there right now that are looking to reinvent your business? Elon Musk, the Tesla boss, had this to say when it came to change leadership. He said, the more immediate threat is how artificial intelligence, particularly autonomous cars, which his own firm is developing, will displace jobs. He said the disruption to people whose job it is to drive will take place over the next 20 years, after which 12 to 15% of the global workforce will be unemployed. 12 to 15% of the global workforce. This is the guy that also wants to start to colonize the planets. These people are out there gunning for all of us, looking to dramatically change the way our organizations operate. So when it comes to change, when we ask people, if I'm in an audience, typically I'll ask folks, raise your hand if you like change. And if I'm in a group of 1,000 people speaking, very few hands go up. And of the hands that go up, those that do like change, the type of change they like is when they understand the need for change. They believe there's a need to change. They're bought in that it's the right thing to do, and they're completely engaged, and they can help their people make the link between what they do, their jobs, and how it will help the organization or the team accomplish the change. That's the type of change most people like when they do raise their hand and say, yes, I love change. But think about this. How many people like this type of change? You better get out there and make it happen. You've got to push that strategy throughout the organization. You've got to go out and tell people what to do. How many people like that type of change? And yet, if you think of the job of most managers and supervisors, that's exactly what they're asked to do. Somebody in the senior level makes decisions around new strategies and objectives that we go after, and then we tell people, here's where we're going, and we expect them to suck it up and embrace the change and dive in and help us make it happen. I want to actually put all of you, your minds, on change and experience change over the next minute. So just play along with me and actually let me see if you can actually feel and sense what it's like to go through change. But before we dive into that, think about this. How easy is it for you to change your own behavior? Just answer that question on your own. Just think about that. How about changing others' behavior? And then finally, for those of you that are leaders out there, how about changing the behavior of lots of others? How difficult is that? Changing human behavior is one of the most difficult things a leader will ever face, and we don't think there's a close second. So what I'd ask for you to do is this. We want to change from this numbering system that many of us utilize, that we're very familiar with. And over the next 45 seconds, I'd ask for you to actually play along. We are going to change from this old numbering system. And by the way, this is an easy change. Most people say it's very easy to accomplish. Those of you that are on this call, I'm sure will be able to embrace this and make it happen quite quickly. We want to adopt this new numbering system that I put up on the screen. So literally, I will give you 45 seconds to memorize and embrace and take ownership and internalize this new numbering system, because in 30 seconds, the old numbers will go away and we will only use the new system on the right. So whatever you can do right now to memorize it, go ahead, whether it's just looking at it and memorizing it, taking a picture, writing it down, whatever works for you. And I would imagine, I know when I do this in live sessions, you can see the confusion in people's face. You can see that their minds almost go on chaos, into chaos. And what happens when our minds are in chaos? We tend to shut down. Similar to what happens when we go through change. Some people look at this and say, why are we doing it? What's the purpose? Those numbers on the left have worked for us for an awful long time. So just take another 10 seconds, whatever works for you. Some of you might be looking, saying, you see a system, 2 lines, 3 lines, 2 lines, 3 lines. Well, good luck with that. So I'm going to blank out the screen. And what I'd ask you to do is whatever you did to memorize and internalize that new numbering system. If you took a picture, just hide it. If you wrote it down and copied it, just turn your piece of paper over. And here's what I'd ask you to do. Using the new system, I'd like for you to write down the following number: 2,976. Now, my guess is most of us on the phone here and on this webinar probably started to write that number down, 2,976, using the old numbering system. We kind of cling to what is familiar. And think about that for a moment. There's nothing more important for a human to hold on to what they believe to be true or what their reality is. And if our reality is the old way we used to do things works for me, I don't want to change, that's what our minds will cling to. So let me ask the group, if I really truly wanted you to embrace that new system, what would it take? What would it take for all of us to not only have the desire to embrace it, but to own it, internalize it, and use it from this point on forward? And the answer is, if you think about it, there's some keys. One is, well, I need some time. I need to know how I can get familiar with it. Maybe I need some training with it. More importantly, I need to understand the case as to why we're changing. Why are we moving from the old system to the new system? What's the compelling case as to why? Those are all some examples of what it would take to really get an organization or an individual to embrace, adopt, internalize, and take ownership for the new change. And again, think about this as it relates to any change effort in your organization. Would it help all of you on this webinar if I provided you with a system or a process where you can have that new numbering system burnt into your memory, burnt into your brain, and you will never forget it from this point forward? So I'm going to do that. In 3 seconds, I'll be able to make sure that you'll never forget the new system, and you'll be able to use it from this point forward. And 3, 2, 1. And in most cases, when people see what I just put up on the screen, which is a system or a process around that change, our minds almost release. In fact, in live sessions, you can almost hear the audience say, ah, I get it. I can see that. I can work with that. That's a simple example of what exemplary leaders do for their people when it comes to change. They create such a crystal clear, compelling picture of the future that people can see themselves in that future, and they suck it up, and they can actually begin to understand how that future will make their lives better, their job easier, help their team, and help their organization. And they'll voluntarily choose to pitch in and help you make that future a reality. When a leader creates a crystal clear, pristine picture of the future that demonstrates a compelling case as to why we need to change and what's in it for everybody, people will voluntarily choose to make that future a reality for you. The issue here is when you look out and ask leaders at every level how well they believe they are at communicating a change or a vision or the results that we need to achieve as an organization, what percentage, and it's one of those numbers listed on the screen, what percentage of leaders do you personally believe think they're really good at communicating vision and change? The number is actually 90%. 90% of managers and supervisors and leaders believe they're excellent at communicating change or where we are going as an organization. But yet when we ask those within an organization, those in the mid-levels and down to the front lines, how well they believe their leadership is at communicating goals and the vision and the change, how well do you think individuals that we are leading believe we are doing when it comes to communicating change? And it's one of those numbers. And it's actually 20%. Only 20% of our folks believe that we're doing a good job at communicating where we're going as an organization. We have found that over 25 years, 90% of individuals within an organization, 90% of the time, people are not crystal clear on what we expect of them or where we're going as an organization. And that creates a lot of negative consequences. When we don't have clarity, it always leads to some degree of confusion, lack of alignment. And when we're confused, it leads to miscommunication. When we miscommunicate, we create misunderstandings within an organization. When there are misunderstandings, it leads to levels and degrees of mistrust and distrust within an organization. And ultimately, individuals go into what we call isolation, which is where they're focused only on doing their quote unquote job, only focused on doing what's on their job description. They don't go above and beyond to help us achieve what's most important. Some of the root causes that create this lack of clarity and confusion is when we make slow decisions, when we have unresolved conflicts, when we operate in silos, when we take too long to make choices, when we're not specific on the measures and how we're measuring success from where we are today and where we need to get to, not defining the win, the picture of success, what it will look like when we achieve what's critically important, and how are we measuring that, when there's a priority plethora, when we overload the organization with too many goals in addition to keeping the operation running, when we have mixed messaging from leadership, and when we have lack of alignment. Those are just a few examples of what causes this lack of clarity. When you think about executing flawlessly any strategy that we need to accomplish or achieving a new goal that will put us in a better position in the future, which is what change is all about. When you look at these two bars that are on the screen here, the top one, the number of goals, it states in addition to the whirlwind. The whirlwind is just our term for everything that you need to do on a daily basis to keep your operation going. It's the day-to-day life support of running the organization. So in addition to keeping the organization going, when you task your organization to go after 2 or 3 new goals, 2 or 3 new changes, the goals we achieve with excellence on the bottom, you're pretty well set up to accomplish and achieve those 2 to 3. What happens, however, if you bump that number up to 4 to 10 new goals or objectives or strategies to achieve in addition to maintaining the operation? You can answer that for yourselves. We can't have a two-way conversation here, but most people tell us the number actually goes backward. And there's an actual term for this. We call it the law of diminishing returns. The funny thing here is I've probably asked the question 2,000 times, what happens when we bump up the number to 4 to 10 new goals to go after in addition to maintaining the operation? Nobody ever says that we'll achieve all 10 with excellence. People know that when we diffuse focus and energy and alignment, the number goes backward. And if you increase that number to 11 to 20, you pretty much will accomplish nothing with success. When everything's a priority, nothing's a priority. In fact, at 11 to 20, everything becomes a big blur to everybody in your organization. In fact, at 11 to 20, if you're tasking your team or organization to achieve 11 to 20 new goals in addition to maintaining the operation, you have officially abdicated leadership to the whirlwind, just to maintaining the operation. We completely lose focus. Now, the key here is this: those 11 to 20 new goals, new objectives, new outcomes, most often, those are good ideas. The key, and what's a little bit counterintuitive about this whole premise and idea about focus, this principle of focusing on less to achieve more, is you have to at times say no to good ideas. It does not mean we will eventually get to those ideas. It's just at this point in time, We need to create a lot of focus around the top 2 or 3 things that will fundamentally move your organization or your team into a better position in the future. And as you flawlessly execute the 2 or 3 that you select, once 1 or 2 are achieved, you replace those with what is next in your priority list of what will propel you into a better position in the future. Just remember this simple quote: there will always be more good ideas than there is capacity to execute. And those ideas are going to be coming at you all year long, and they're never given to you at the beginning of the year in a nice clean stack, prioritized in the order of how they should be executed. So as a leader, your challenge is you have to understand you need to say no to good ideas. We should all get that leadership certificate and hang it in our office somewhere. There are also a couple focus traps. The one we just talked about, we can't say yes to all of the good ideas. It doesn't mean we won't get to them. It just means we need to identify what are the current top 1, 2, or 3 that we're going to focus on now and create extreme energy and passion and alignment around. Those are the ones we're going to execute flawlessly, and then we'll implement the additional good ideas afterward. The second trap is turning everything in the whirlwind into the day-to-day operation into a goal. Just because you can measure something does not mean it needs to be a goal for optimization. And we measure a lot within our organizations. We measure financial data, operational data, customer data, employee data. Just because we measure something does not mean it needs to be a goal for optimization. We need to get real concrete and focused on what are the new goals represented on the right in this graphic. What is most important at this time that if we achieve it propels us into a better position in the future. That's where we want to apply the change leadership principles and ensure that we execute them flawlessly. We need to sustain the whirlwind, the day job, everything you're doing on the left, life support, keeping the lights on, running your organization. We need to sustain that. That's what got you to where you are today. But we need to get really clear on what are the 1 or 2 things that will put us in a fundamentally better position in the future. And that's where we apply the principles of change leadership and execution. We need to spend and certainly devote at least 80% of our time sustaining the operation, but we need to also create a lot of focus, energy, and passion around the change efforts. The primary mindset is this: if everything holds, the left side, the whirlwind, everything you're doing today, if you can maintain that, what would be the 1 or 2 key things represented on the right that would blast your organization into a significantly better place in the future? And that's where we get people aligned. We kind of look at those results, those 1 or 2 things that we have to achieve to avoid complacency and ensure that we have a competitive position in our marketplace. It's of no use saying we've done our best. We've got to succeed in doing what's necessary. So what is it that's necessary within your organization? And how clear have you been in communicating that to everybody from the senior most levels down to the front lines? Those results that you need to go after need to meet the criteria of meaningful, measurable, and memorable results. And again, I'm just hitting the headlines here. We're not getting into depth into any of these principles, but these are fundamental principles that, when adopted, have demonstrated historically that those organizations have been able to achieve and exceed the goals that they go after and sustain them over time. When we can accomplish this and create that clarity around what is it that puts us in a better position, and we communicate them effectively, people start to come to work every day with this mindset of they're playing a winnable game. Much different than when people come to work feeling like they're playing not to lose. It's an aspiration that all leaders should go after, which is, do my people believe they are playing a winnable game? Or are they coming to work every day focused on activity versus just the result, which the results we want them to go after, which is really where we want people focused. Every day we want people coming in focused on the results, which is the bottom, the desired and undesired outcomes of taking actions. When people focus simply on activity, it does not assure that you will achieve or exceed your desired results. A question I often ask the groups is, does all activity produce a result? And most people will say no. But the answer is emphatically, yes, it does, because even if you do nothing, you will still get a result. The reason I put these two slides in here is we want everybody coming to work every day focused on the results that the team needs to achieve. We don't want people focused on just keeping busy. There's a difference between doing my job and achieving desired results. Most leaders, managers, and supervisors see themselves on the right-hand side, that their job is helping the team achieve your desired results. Many people come to work every day with the mindset on the left of just doing my job, my activity. What we want to create is what's in the middle there, that everybody has the mindset that achieving the desired results is their job. It's the reason we hire people, to help us achieve desired results, not to be busy. But if those results aren't crystal clear and don't meet the criteria of meaningful, measurable, and memorable, if they're somewhat cloudy or vague, it actually precludes people from taking accountability and ownership to help achieve the results if they're not crystal clear on what it is that we're going after. You know, the example in a football team, whose job is it to defend a corner kick? Well, it's everybody's job. It doesn't matter if you're a forward, you're a midfielder, whatever position, whatever your job description is, it's everybody's job to defend a corner kick, because we're all very clear on what the result is that we're after as a team, which is to win the game. So we don't just hold ourselves to the description of our job, if I'm a forward, which is primarily to score goals. We go and we defend that corner kick because we know it's part of helping us achieve what matters most, to win the game. That's the type of mindset we want within our organization. If you don't like sports analogies, in an orchestra or in a symphony, if every musician was playing from a different song sheet, or starting at a different time, ending at a different time, what type of experience would that be? We must be aligned. We all need to be clear on the desired result. The key model that we use with many leaders, such as you, those of you on this call, is when you think about the results any organization achieves, any team achieves, it's a direct byproduct of the actions our people take. The actions our people take are a result of the beliefs they hold within our organization. And the beliefs your organization and individuals within your organization hold is a direct result of the experiences they have had. Now, this model can apply to personal situations as well as in the professional realm, but primarily in the business world, the experiences that leadership and management creates for your people develops and cultivates beliefs that everybody within your organization holds. People will take action based upon those beliefs, and it will produce the results your team or your department or your organization is achieving to date. The key is this: if we're only focused on telling people what to do and when to do it and how to do it, that takes a lot of time, energy, and effort. And the issue there is when you're not enforcing compliance around policies and procedures or telling people what to do, they will always revert back to the next layer down in this model of their own personal beliefs, and that's what they'll take action on. What we really need to do and how we help organizations get to the head and the heart, which is the bottom two layers of this model, is getting crystal clear on the results, the goals, the vision, a picture of success, so people voluntarily choose to buy in to help us achieve those results. The bottom two, and it really connects to both the head and the heart of the individuals that we lead. The bottom three layers of this model, which is really how your people think and act, is your corporate culture, whether it's a team, or it could be your team's culture, whether it's 50 people, 500 people, or 5,000. But the way your people think and act is producing your results today. And the question I would pose to this group here is, are the results you need to achieve in the future going to be more difficult to achieve than the results you're achieving today? And if so, can we expect to achieve better results if we continue to think and act in the way that we always have? Normally, the answer is no. We will need to create some shifts in the way people think and act. And when we can get to the head and the heart, which is the bottom two layers of this model, we begin to get people to voluntarily choose to change behaviors so that they take the appropriate actions to deliver the results that we must achieve. That model, by the way, we actually work with senior executive teams in a full day and 2-day workshop to really inculcate that model into the organization, get leaders to internalize it and understand how they can create the appropriate shifts in culture to accelerate change within an organization. I gave you maybe a minute overview on how that model works. What I'd ask you to consider is this: people will work harder and more effectively for people they like, and we like them directly. There's a direct proportion to how they make us feel. In that model that I just showed you, when you think about the experiences you have created for those around you and the beliefs that that has fostered in people around you, those that you lead, how have you made folks feel? And have you made them feel and believe that they want to buy in and take the appropriate actions to help you and your team achieve what matters most? Hopefully you have. How do your employees view you? It's based upon the experiences you've created for them. How do your colleagues view you? Consider that. How does your boss view you? Well, that's a direct result of the experiences you've created for those people. How do your friends and family view you? And most importantly, how do your clients view you? How do your customers view you? The model that I shared with you is critically important, but the most important element within that model that hopefully you can embrace is that just understand every action, the second layer down in that model, every action you take is an experience for everybody watching you. And it's either creating a new belief they'll hold about you, or it's reinforcing what they already think about you. And if you have the self-awareness about the experiences you're creating, you begin to foster beliefs in those around you that will get those folks to choose the appropriate actions to help you achieve the results that you have identified to be most important. I'm just going to skip through these few slides because we only have a few minutes remaining, and I want to get to a couple other key principles as it relates to change leadership. So at the top level of that model, how clear are the results within your organization, within your team, within your department? What do you need to see people stop doing in order to achieve those desired results or that change effort? At the action layer, how many people in your team, in your department, in your business unit, or in your entire organization can make a link or a tie between what they do, their job, and that change effort, the results you need to achieve? And how are you going to increase that number? At the belief layer of that model, what are the beliefs that exist broadly within your team or organization that are getting in the way and slowing down your ability to achieve the change that you need? What do those beliefs need to be? And what experiences will you create to shift the beliefs? And to what extent are you reinforcing beliefs that are propelling you forward and inadvertently beliefs that are perhaps holding you back as an organization? To shift the belief, you need to create new experiences. So this is where you may be today, represented in that blue box. In 2018, you may have an idea of the change or the vision or the goal or the objective that you need to accomplish. There's going to be represented by all of those lines a variety of different strategies and projects and initiatives that you need to accomplish in order to achieve that vision. However, creating a clear, compelling vision heightens urgency, engagement, commitment, and accountability. And most importantly, it's the most effective place to begin to foster alignment. You can foster alignment much quicker around one compelling vision than you can around the half dozen or dozen different projects and strategies and initiatives that need to be accomplished and flawlessly executed to get you there. We need to get really clear on where we're going as an organization, because if we don't, we kind of operate like that model on the left. Everybody going in a different direction, frenetic behavior, and that's where we're not clear. The whirlwind dominates and we don't have the alignment or the degree of alignment that we need. When we get clear on that vision, that's where we have significant degrees of focus and alignment. Forces that may push an organization out of alignment, when we have conflicting priorities, territorialism, self-protection, short-term operation pressures, lack of resources, cultural baggage, things that happened in the past that are holding us back. We really need to create that sense of urgency. And what we mean by that is the sense of urgency is a byproduct of a crystal clear, compelling vision of what's possible, the opportunity that is available for all of us within an organization. Part of Dr. Cotter's research indicated lack of urgency is one of the primary reasons why most, actually 75% plus of change efforts fail or produce only mediocre results. His research indicates that there's much too high of a degree of complacency within organizations, just people content with the status quo. He calls false urgency the notion of just people running around, frenetic behavior, a lot of activity, but yet it is not focused exactly on helping us achieve what's wildly important, that WIG, wildly important goal represented at the top of that model, or the desired result, or the change that we're going after. False urgency is often recognized or seen as true urgency, but it's a completely different mindset, and it needs to be transformed into what we call true urgency. And it's very rare in organizations to see what you're seeing and described here on the screen as true urgency. And it's a leader's responsibility and accountability to take the appropriate actions and implement the appropriate principles that will generate a high level of true urgency. I'm just going to go through these very quickly. And here's some 3 primary indicators that will suggest that you may not have the degree of urgency within your organization to blast through the inertia to help you achieve what matters most. And I believe Ollie's going to make all of these slides available to to all of you that are on this call here. So I know we're going through these rather quickly, but you will have access to these. 4 tactics to increase urgency. Very simple, but yet not always easy to do. As long as we have the awareness of what needs to be accomplished and generate and create a little bit of focus on these types of things, we can blast through that inertia and create heightened levels of urgency, which is fundamentally required to successfully achieve and succeed and sustain any change effort. And in its simplest terms, urgency is all about creating action that is exceptionally alert, externally oriented, relentlessly aimed at winning, making progress each and every day, constantly purging low-value activities, and we accomplish all of this by focusing on the heart and the head, connecting to the head and the heart of everybody that we lead. There's a significant difference between leading and managing. Leaders make things happen that otherwise would not have happened. Managers make things happen that are supposed to happen. Leadership is about moving forward. Management is about control. Management is often an assignment. Leadership is a choice. You don't have to have a title to be a leader. Managers most often focus on tasks and activities, and leaders create focus on the big picture and the vision, what's possible, what's the opportunity, and how will it help everybody in our organization. Of the 5 practices of exemplary leadership, we're going to give you a little bit of insight on one of the most crucial, but the 5 are: model the way, do what you say you will do, challenge the process, looking for opportunities to grow, innovate, and improve, take risks, learn from mistakes, move forward, enable others to act by strengthening and sharing information, by fostering collaboration and promoting cooperative goals and building trust, encourage the heart, recognizing individual contributions to success and celebrating team accomplishments regularly. Again, these are all fundamental principles to leading change, but it really requires a high dose of leadership. Most change efforts, one of this, in addition to complacency and not having enough sense of urgency and not having a clear, compelling vision, another downfall and another derailer of most change efforts is there's too much of a focus on managing the change versus leading the change. Leading change has everything to do with creating vision, aligning, motivating, inspiring, modeling, challenging. Management's more about planning, budgeting, staffing, organizing, and problem solving. None of that really connects to the heart And we really need that level of commitment, connecting the heart and minds of those that we lead. If we're only connecting to the logical side, it produces slow, smaller, methodical change. But when we can connect to the passion and untapped energy within those we lead, it creates bigger, faster, passionate change. And that's about inspiring a shared vision of what that change looks like, where we're going, creating a vision of an uplifting and ennobling future, enlisting others in a common vision by appealing to their values, interests, hopes, and dreams. It's all about breathing life into the vision so that people can see themselves in a better place in the future. Think about the old parable about two men carrying rocks on the side of the road, and an individual stops and asks each of them, "What are you doing?" The first individual responds by saying, "Can't you tell I'm carrying rocks?" The second person answers by saying, "I am building a cathedral." They're tapped into the vision. They have more purpose in what they're doing. They're finding their work meaningful, and they're coming to work every day focused on the result rather than activity. Creating a vision as a leader, our definition, by the way, of a vision is it's an ideal and unique image of the future for the common good. When you can do that as a leader, you're much more likely to connect to the head and the heart of those you lead. The 4 characteristics and traits that people look for most in an exemplary leader are a leader that's honest, competent, inspiring, and forward-looking. So that vision, that last one that I circled there, forward-looking, it's really what separates and differentiates leaders from other credible people. Your job as a leader is to create that vision so that people can see themselves in a better place. There are effective elements within a vision. They're all in the definition. It's an ideal state. It's unique. There's an image, future-oriented, and it's common good. There's something in it for all of us. There are a lot of positive byproducts of creating a clear vision. You can see them listed there on the screen. And visions, and when we get real precise on what's possible and the opportunity, we really connect to the head and the heart. Tactics will never connect to the heart and create the passion within those you lead. Possibilities and opportunities will. We can connect to both the head and the heart, create a mindset of I want to make this happen versus I have to make this happen, create a mindset of a pull versus a push. And we really go through these principles of leadership, these 7 key principles, and which we touched on at a very high level and hit the headlines. But the key premise for the first principle is change management is an oxymoron. Change is all about the future and the unknown. Management is about the here and the now and the known. Leadership is what's truly required. When it comes to change, we need a 75% focus on leading the change, 25% on managing. What we have found in the research, and the reason many change efforts fail, is that the opposite is typically what we see, a 75% focusing on managing the change and only 25% on leading it. The second principle of the 7 that really resulted from the research over 30 years is leadership is a choice. It's that simple. Leadership is not about your title, who reports to you, or how many people are in your organization. It's about the congruency between what you say and what you do. The next principle is all about true urgency. And the fallback there is oftentimes we think we have it, but too often and almost nearly always the assumption is we have it when we really don't. And then the power of volunteerism, when we can get real clear on a compelling vision where there's something in it for all of us in a better future, it creates a want to versus a have to culture. And we create kind of a complementary system within our organizations, much different than a task force or assigning people to a change team. We get people that voluntarily tap into their discretionary performance area to go above and beyond what's required to help us achieve what's critically important to put the organization in a better position in the future. And the final principle of getting to the heart. And when it comes to that principle, it's often missed, and it's not necessarily easy to accomplish. And it's more than project management. We just talked a bit about that. Managing change is only 25% of the effective prescription. The rest has to do with the exemplary leadership practices. So once we instill and apply the principles to effectively leading change, large-scale change transformations, we accompany and supplement and enhance those efforts by embedding within all organizations keys to accountability. How do we increase levels of individual, personal, and organizational accountability? How do we also insert and instill the disciplines of flawless execution? And how do we cultivate our optimal culture, creating shifts in the way people think and act and behave so that it propels us toward our desired result and the change that we're looking for? As I leave you, I just would ask for you to remember this. Leadership is a choice, and all of you are being watched every day. You're not just being listened to. People will tolerate what you say. They'll act on what they see you do. Just be very self-aware about the experiences that you create for those around you. Thanks so much for your time, and Ali, I'll turn this back over to you.
All right, Mike, thank you very much. Thank you for a very, very interesting presentation. Folks, we are now open for a Q&A. If you have any questions, you could either insert in the question box or you could equally raise your hand. There's a hand icon available on the webinar console. So please click on it if you want to speak directly with Mike. And let me go to the question box. There are a couple of them already posted. There's one. In many change management drives, employees within organizations are not able to lean back and think about existing problems in depth because they feel under pressure to deliver results quickly to comply with the new drive of change. How should we tackle this?
So if I understand the question, it sounds as though what you're asking is, in organizations with so much going on, at times we're not giving the appropriate time to consider the change or how we can contribute to helping the organization move forward. One of the keys there, Ali, is because one of the terms I used in the presentation was the whirlwind, the day job, everything that is going on within any organization at any given point in time, just to continue the operation and to maintain the operation and keep the lights on. We call that life support. It's what makes your organization run. Oftentimes, what's happening within organizations, that type of thing, the whirlwind, maintaining the operation, it fundamentally clashes with the new opportunities or results that we're going after, the new goals that we're going after. And the primary reason is this: the new goals, the new results that we're going after, those are always really important. But maintaining the operation, the whirlwind, oftentimes that is urgent. So when you think about that, when you have something that's important and it clashes with something that is urgent, which of those two generally wins? When urgency clashes with importance, usually it's urgency that wins. And so that we find that we revert back to just maintaining the operation, and we don't create enough focus and time and energy to really zero in on the top 1, 2, or 3 new goals or objectives that will put us in a fundamentally better position in the future. It's one of the reasons that when we went through the presentation, one of the fallbacks when it comes to change or to execution or going after new goals is if you overtask or overload an organization with too many new goals or objectives to go after, in addition to maintaining the operation, we diffuse focus, energy, and commitment. And so that's one of the reasons. When you consider the question that you just read, Ali, does that address that, or was there more to the question that needs to be answered?
I think that was quite eloquently explained. So let me move to another question. As I'm looking at the clock, we're short on time as well. So another one, inaccurate data about your current as-is flows can cost an enterprise millions. Any suggestions for recognizing the flawed data to further isolate, and how to ensure data cleansing plan must be developed in any such as-is to should-be drive for change management?
So I'm not quite sure I am following the question.
Yeah,
Can you
the question
repeat
I
that?
think is referring towards the analysis of the current data. What if it turns out to be flawed? You know, you spend a lot of time in analyzing your current flows and processes.
Yeah, well, one of the reason, well, again, of course, one of the items I talked about in the world, we measure a lot of things in most organizations. Most people are not suffering from a lack of data. One of the reasons and drawbacks, and one of the primary culprits that actually impedes flawless execution is in too many organizations. Just because we can measure something, and there's a lot that we can measure, a lot of organizations tend to put the attempt to optimize everything that they can measure. And when we're spending too much time focusing on measuring and optimizing everything within our organization, it can derail our focus and diffuse the energy and focus on going after what's most important. Now, if the data is flawed, that's actually not an area where we have expertise. You and those of you on this call know your organizations better than we could ever possibly know your organization. When it comes to flawed data, that's something that you would need to look or have somebody that is more adept into scrutinizing the analytics within your organization address that. But if you find that you're traveling down the wrong path, our advice is always, let's learn from the mistakes and just redirect and get focused on where and create alignment around where we need to go. But we would not dwell on it. We would not focus and look to lay blame as to why we went down that path. We would quickly reconvene and create alignment around what we need to do to redirect the organization and create focus and alignment and energy around what does need to happen.
Okay, thank you very much. And then one last question. In your view, Mike, what is the topmost hindrance people find in any change management drive?
One of it's the most the number one. There's really two that are very close. One is there's a lack of urgency, but that's a byproduct of people being too complacent, and the complacency is also a result of leadership not creating adequate thrust and passion and energy around what's possible and the opportunities that we can create together within an organization that will ultimately end up and creating a better future for everybody involved. So it has to do with the complacency levels are too high, leadership not creating a heightened sense of urgency, and that all stems from not creating a crystal clear vision of what's possible and the outcomes and how it benefits everybody in an organization. And the other advice and principle that we have found that works and is really critical within organizations is that prior to rolling out or pushing out any new strategy or initiative, to make absolutely certain that you first work on creating that heightened sense of urgency around what's possible, the vision of success, the picture of success, and what's in it for everybody prior to pushing out strategies and initiatives. If you push out strategies and initiatives prior to creating that buy-in, prior to connecting to the head and the heart, the human reaction is to push right back and reject any change that's being pushed out. So it's really critical to create that heightened sense of urgency and ensure that we rid the organization of complacency.